Jim Bolt, Chairman of Executive Development Associates. Executive Development Associates was founded in 1982 after I had been at Xerox Corporation for almost 17 years, the first half of it in marketing and sales and operations. And then I sort of stumbled into human resources, starting running leadership development for all of the field operations, and then got promoted from there into running management training for all of the company. And eventually, we didn't have cool titles like we do now, but if we did, I would have been the Chief Learning Officer and the Head of Talent Management when I left in 1982 to found Executive Development Associates. And what I wanted to do was to start a consulting practice that would do custom executive education work that would help companies build the executive capabilities that they need to execute their strategy. And that was a completely new idea back then, because back then what companies were doing was sending a few high potential executives off to university executive education programs. And that essentially was the definition of executive development back at that point in time. So it was a really new idea, to help CEOs and senior executives in companies use executive development to actually achieve their strategic objectives. So that was the founding idea, and it was, a profoundly different way to use executive development. And so that's kind of the historical foundation or underpinnings of the EDA consulting practice. And in a lot of ways it hasn't changed since then. We've essentially been doing the same thing since 1982. We wrote a Harvard Business Review article in 1985 called Linking Executive Development Strategy, which was essentially about how CEOs were using executive development to achieve their strategic objectives. And the idea was not that it was a bad thing to send individual executives off to university executive education programs. Companies still do that. The idea was that sending individuals off to university executive education programs is fine for the individual, but it doesn't help build the organization capabilities needed to achieve your objectives as an organization. And that you could, in addition to that, design custom programs that would build the specific capabilities you need to address your marketplace challenges and achieve your strategic goals. So that was the basic idea behind Executive Development Associates as a consulting practice, and that's what we've been doing since 1982. An evolution of the idea was the work we did with Texas Instruments, which was closer to integrating the strategy and executive development processes. So that was an advancement where instead of just thinking about, gee, can we link executive development to the strategy processes, can we use executive development as part of the process of shaping strategy and building the capabilities needed to execute the strategy. That was another breakthrough, and had tremendous impact on the organization, not only because we were able to improve the quality of the strategy and improve the strategic thinking capabilities of the executives who participated, but also build through the process of the workshops that were created to do that, build deep understanding and ownership and commitment to the strategy, which would not have existed otherwise. So it's another incredibly valuable way to use executive development. If you think about executive development today, in some ways things haven't changed very much. I mean, this whole concept of using executive development as part of the way for a CEO or senior executives to achieve their strategic agenda, that's still extremely important. But the question is, things are much more complex now than they were 25 years ago. And the speed of change has accelerated dramatically. So how do you do that faster? But also, if you think about, what are the common challenges that organizations face? Things like, how do we become more market focused? How do we improve strategic thinking and capabilities in terms of not only individual executives but the organization. How do we become more innovative and get better at business development, new product development? How do we increase collaboration and coordination across the organization so we can bring the collective capabilities of our organization to better serve our customers? Things like that are very common challenges that organizations face. So we can use executive development as a way to address those effectively, but we've got to do that in an accelerated way. We don't have time, we don't have months and months and months to address those issues. So the idea of accelerating strategy execution is key to how we do executive development now. Importance of having a process that accelerates the design and development of new executive development strategy systems and programs to address the key challenges facing the organization is critical, and therefore we had to find a way to do that. And it addresses two issues that clients were telling us. One was we need a way to more rapidly create new strategies and programs that build the capabilities we need to accelerate strategy execution. And secondly, we need to do it in a way that builds line ownership of what we're creating. So the idea we came up with is called Rapid Cycle Design, and it includes two steps. One is Rapid Cycle Diagnostics, which is a web-based survey which allows us to do a needs assessment very quickly and engage the full target audience. And the second is called Rapid Cycle Design Workshop, which engages representatives from the line organization in the design process. And as a result of those two steps, we can cut the process for needs assessment and design from 6 months to a couple of months. And secondly, do it in a way that fully engages the line and other key stakeholders so that they have ownership in the creation of a new executive development strategy or system or program, instead of human resources trying to create it and go sell it to the key stakeholders in line organization. Strategic unity is a key factor in an organization's ability to perform. And strategic unity is really all about creating alignment around the organization's strategy. So strategic unity is about having a clear, compelling strategy, having alignment throughout the organization around that strategy, which means having understanding about it throughout the organization. Thirdly, having key capabilities to execute that strategy in existence throughout the organization. And lastly, having aligned organization goals right down to the individual and team throughout the organization. So if you have strategic unity and alignment like that, then the organization can perform. And if you don't, then you have dissipated action, and you can't possibly have good performance in an organization. So strategic unity is critical to an organization in order for it to be successful. Unfortunately, what we found when we do a needs assessment through either combination, well, either interviews or the web-based diagnostics that we talked about, is that most organizations don't have strategic unity. And the way we know that is we ask specifically to define the vision and strategy to the organization. So when we do that, what we find out is that there's a wide disparity of answers to that question, and we get things like we don't have a vision, or we don't know what it is, or we have it but it's not really very good, or we have a vision but we don't have strategies to support it. So unfortunately, when we get that information and we go back to a CEO to report it to them, they're not very happy about it. But it's quite common, unfortunately, in organizations that that's the case. And to make things worse, it's typical that top management thinks that there is a unity and alignment because they've turned over the vision and strategy that they created to the PR department to create typical communication processes like videos and speeches and town hall meetings. But those passive communication processes don't work. So it's not unusual that a year after they think that the strategy and the vision has been rolled out in the organization that they find that it really hasn't taken. So when we do a diagnostic process, it's unfortunate that usually we find out that there isn't a broad understanding at all. Yeah, the Texas Instruments Creating Our Future process, where we were able to build workshops that had participants work together on a draft of the vision and strategy of the organization, overcame that process and built strategic unity by having people engaged in the strategy process and building deep understanding and ownership of it among the top 150 executives in the company. And that allowed them, because they really got it, to communicate it throughout the entire company. Well, I think sustainability is on everybody's mind these days, and what people are talking about in terms of sustainability is mostly about a sustainable planet. And I think we can't have a sustainable planet without sustainable organizations. And I really think that major progress is going to be made on the sustainable planet and a sustainable society through the organizations that have the wherewithal to make the biggest impact. And I think, for better or worse, that's, for the most part, corporations. So I think we have to work on having sustainable corporations, and we can't do that unless we have sustainable leaders. So I think our emphasis has to be on sustainable leadership and making sure we understand what that is and building sustainable leaders so that we can have sustainable corporations which can contribute to sustainable society and sustainable planet. And so I think EDA's role in that, and always has been, is in creating great leaders and great leadership and great executives. So I really think that's where we fit in. And the foundation that we want to create to help create sustainable leadership will play a major role in that.